Welcome to the Engineer Career Podcast with Rob Cussons.
Thank you very much. Great to be here. He was just totally inspirational. He was a fantastic enthusiast about physics and everything that it led to in the world. We've got mechanical engineers, we've got geotechnical engineers, geophysicists, we've got structural engineers, electrical engineers, people working on CAD, energy analysts. Try and find what you're passionate about, what the purpose is behind the role you want to do. It's just that it's an absolute imperative for humankind. If we want to have a good and happy future, prosperous future, and we want the world to develop equitably with people from all nations, we've absolutely got to tackle climate change.
Welcome to the Engineer Career Podcast with Rob Cussons.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
This is particularly exciting because you're the first professional that studies physics in the podcast. So rebrand to physics a career doesn't quite run the same.
Doesn't have the same ring, no.
No, but this is really exciting to have you on to explore your career, and in particular the world of offshore wind, which you're immersed in at the moment. I think it's very exciting for those who are part of the engineer career community, those who are studying engineering and those who are also in engineering already, to hear about offshore wind, the development of it, and being part of a large project which is within it, and the opportunities that you see for professionals. But as we always do, I'm going to start off with what keeps you, what sparks your interest in physics in the first place.
Yeah, so I think I probably wasn't very excited about physics until I got to kind of fourth year at school, and then I got a different physics teacher to take me into GCSE because I was at school in England, and he was just totally inspirational. He was a fantastic enthusiast about physics and everything that it led to in the world. He had a lot of industrial experience as well, and had then come back into teaching. He also had a PhD in physics and materials physics. And he kind of gave us the option when we were studying for A-level as to what area we wanted to look at. And one of the options was modules on nuclear physics and modules on astrophysics. And the other option was medical and material physics. And his PhD was actually in material physics. And he was definitely nudging us towards the nuclear and astrophysics because he was more excited about teaching it. And it just blew me away. Found it really, really exciting, and that was the area that got me into studying physics at university.
As someone who studied physics at school, and then took it into completely the engineering route, it's interesting to hear from someone that remained within the world of physics. Uh-huh. So talk me through studying physics and in particular your area of astrophysics.
So yeah, I mean, with most courses, my master's ended up as actually physics with astrophysics. So you study a lot of general physics, everything like thermodynamics and thermal physics and electromagnetism, all of that, and then you do more modules that you can kind of pick, or at least that's the way it worked at the University of Leeds where I went. You can pick kind of more modules that are interested in things like cosmology or how stars generate energy, which is what I actually went into in the end. And you can kind of bias your study towards more of that area. So that's what I ended up doing.
I've got a funny feeling that parts of this podcast is going to blow my mind here, so this is going to be fun. So I guess I'm going to compare it to someone, or maybe myself, who studied engineering. Very quickly when you're in university, you begin to try and see where you're going to go with your career. Mm-hmm. Now, engineering is a large space. It's similar to physics. It covers, as you've already mentioned, lots of areas within engineering, but across medical, etc. Did you see, at what point within university did you start to see where you wanted to go with physics in terms of what the job was going to be, or where the career was going to take you?
So that's a really interesting question because it's quite a while ago, so I'm kind of harking back, and my memory may not be exactly accurate. But one of the things my dad was actually really keen to do. So I should say my dad was an engineer by training. He worked in communications engineer for a company called Racal, who no longer exist, but they spawned a little company called Vodafone, which was first called Racal Communications. and he was very, very keen on engineering. He was very keen on apprenticeships as well, and the importance of those, of bringing people into engineering. So through engineering, I got and talking to my dad. He was very keen. He knew I was interested in physics. He knew I was interested in the theoretical side of physics, and he was very keen that I didn't go through that, end up in a room, darkened room, studying theoretical physics and no idea of what industry looked like. So he convinced me to apply for this thing called Year in Industry, which was a great scheme that was run across the UK. I don't actually know if it's still running, but it gave you the opportunity to go and work for a company as a just come out of school before you went to university as a gap year, and get a taste of what industry was like. And that was fantastic. I met some of my best friends through it. I met my now wife through it. And so I did that, greatly enjoyed the job I did there, which was working for a water company, and doing all sorts of things like CAD work and design work, and then went off and studied physics at university and went down the theoretical route that my dad was probably, I don't think he was not keen on it. He just wanted me to have a taste of industry first. But he got the last laugh because I came out of it and then went into basically an engineering type role. So
that's interesting. So when we were having a pre-chat, like I do with most of all my guests before the podcast, I mentioned to you something I say quite a lot, which is students see a job title, a fancy job title in a glossy picture, for example, on LinkedIn, and they immediately, well, not immediately, but there's a general feel that, well, that person was always going to become a director in a senior role. But there's stories behind that and how you've managed to weave through your career. Some things within your own control, and I'm sure some things that have been maybe market led. So you are a project director for Dogger Bank D at the moment.
yeah.
Talk me through your career up to that point and how you kind of found your way into that position.
Yeah, it's quite a circuitous route or tortuous route, yeah, I mean, a lot of things people think and plan out their career. What's your 5-year goal and that kind of thing. And I've never been very good at planning that out, and I think it can constrain you in some ways sometime. So yeah, my route, I suppose. So I was at university in Leeds. I did a 4-month placement as part of the Erasmus program to work in Denmark, and the choices were to work in Marseille for a year, to work in Spain, I can't remember where that was, or to work in Aarhus in Denmark. And I wasn't any good at French or Spanish, and I thought a year was maybe a bit too long. So I went for the 4 months in Denmark. Had a fantastic time there. Really enjoyed the country. Met a lot of Italians there actually, because all the international students were kind of in the same place. We had a wonderful time, and I worked for a gentleman there who will feature later on for 4 months, and then came back and finished my degree in Leeds. I then went, a group of friends and I had decided to visit Vancouver for a year on a 1-year working visa that you could get through Bunak at the time. And so we went over there, my now wife and 3 other friends, we went over there and we lived there for a year together. It was the great thing of that visa was you could rock up without a job, basically, go and live in a country and find work while you're there. So I went to the local University of British Columbia, and listened to a few lectures there. And I went up and talked to Jens Dilling, who was in charge of one of the experiments there afterwards, and said, basically, I'm over here for a year, any chance of a job? That's pretty much the conversation. And fortunately, he was mad enough to take me on, and I worked for a year or almost a year on that experiment, and yeah, had a great time. And by coincidence, at the end of the year, there was a conference called Nuclei in the Cosmos, which was taking place in Vancouver. He very kindly paid for me to attend that conference, and I bumped into my guy I'd worked with in Denmark, who was going back to set up a theory department or run a theory department in Germany. And I got to do my PhD with him in Germany. So, yeah, very, very lucky.
I mean, I can think of worse places in Vancouver. My sister's out there just now.
Right, okay.
It was meant to be a year. I think she's just about to enter her third year. There, so
I can understand that.
This time last year, I was pretty much standing in front of British Columbia, so the university. So cool place.
Yeah, no, it was wonderful.
Awesome. So let's just jump into your time at SSE. So you've had a number of roles at SSE. You started off as a wind analyst, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So I've been with the company coming up for 17 years, which sounds a very long time, but actually I've had 9 or 10 different roles in that time. So it's been a lot of variety, and that's what I really enjoy in terms of a role. So I started off as a wind analyst working on onshore projects. And I joined just after SSE had actually acquired Electricity, and working on onshore projects, because really there was Greater Gabbard, but there weren't any offshore projects otherwise that SSE was involved in at the time. I think I'm right in saying. And then SSE won the rights for a number of projects, including Dogger Bank in the round 3 offshore wind leasing process in, I think it was 2009. And so I then started getting involved in wind analysis for offshore projects as well.
Brilliant. So talk us through wind analysts. What's that role like? Because that's maybe a role that, not everyone is aware of. And talk us through what that role entailed then.
Yeah, so and it's probably partly how I got into it, is worth saying as well. So I kind of decided I didn't want to stay in academia because I'd lived in a number of places, and I was concerned that I would end up moving to and having little control over where I lived, I suppose, in the future, and always seeking a kind of permanent position. So I decided to go into industry. It was just after the 2008 Climate Change Act was signed, which signed into law an 80% reduction by 2050 in climate gases. And that was really pivotal. And I looked at renewable energy and I thought, that's an industry I want to get into. And so then I started looking around, okay, with a physics PhD or astrophysics PhD, what jobs can I do in renewable energy? And applied for a lot of different jobs. And then, much like buses, a number came along at the same time. And I came back from Germany to come for interviews. And wind analysis was the role I managed to land. And the role really consists of working out how much energy a wind farm is going to produce through analysis of data that's being gathered, trying to work out how much turbines are going to produce, all the losses that are associated with it, and then in the first place gathering that data. So that can be from meteorological masts onshore or the same offshore, or LiDAR technology. Or it can be at an earlier stage from kind of hindcast models and that kind of thing. So yeah, it's a really crucial part of understanding the commercial case for a wind farm.
Yeah, and it's something that's been, I mean, I don't get involved. I have been involved with that side of the industry, but I can only assume that there's been an extreme level of it across the UK, in particular, obviously in the North Sea, with the number of projects that have spawned from the number of rounds through ScotWind, which I guess is all part in the relevance of it. So you're now the project director for Dogger Bank D. How did you come into that role? Because I'm right in saying you were a project manager on the project as well beforehand. So you've just nicely jumped your way up the ladder.
Yeah. Number of roles across SSE. I suppose the would be here a long time. So I've had a whole mixture of different things. But I've worked in engineering. I've worked in group strategy for a period while covering someone's maternity leave. I've worked in business development, which was great in terms of getting a more commercial idea of projects. I worked in engineering again. Previously, I worked as an R&D manager, actually, within the engineering department. And then I moved. I wanted to get more back involved in the kind of commercial side of projects. And the opportunity came to work as a value improvement manager on Dogger Bank A, B, and C, the first 3 phases of the project. And that was, it was kind of a sideways move, if you like, in terms of it was the same seniority within the organization, but just offered a lot of opportunity to get back into the commercial side of it, because the idea of the role was to look across technical, commercial, finance, operations, all aspects of a project, and say, right, okay, where are there opportunities to improve the business case for the project? And that kind of helicopter view of a project, but then being able to dive down into specific elements of it and work with a fantastic, knowledgeable team of people, really was a massive opportunity for me. And that led to, Dogger Bank A, B, and C were developed from the original Dogger Bank zone, and Dogger Bank C was developed, I suppose, on a similar line as Dogger Bank A and B in terms of density of the turbines, with the new advent of much, much bigger turbines since the project was first developed. It became apparent that there might be the opportunity to compress those turbines and develop more capacity on the same seabed area. And so we worked on that for a long period, and we looked at opportunities with regard to the Crown Estate and the leasing of that. And out of that came the idea for Dogger Bank D, imaginatively named as the next letter in the alphabet. And that went from a kind of concept through to a real project, and I became project manager for it, and the kind of project's grown from there.
It's amazing when you look back on a career and you think of where you started off as the wind analyst,
Yeah.
now being the project director of a project which maybe you didn't see coming at the time. But,
No, absolutely.
certainly the D element of it. I'd like to just jump into one part here, which I think is really important, because when you are studying at university, irrespective if it's physics or engineering or any area, but from an engineering point of view, you don't always see that you can move jobs. You can kind of do a job for maybe 2 to 3 years and then find another opportunity. Is that something you've consciously done as you've kind of developed across your career? Found something that you maybe felt that would be good for your development, or something that you found interest in. Talk me through how you've managed to snake through those, because I'd say that because I used to get criticised for being the 2.5 year man at a company, but I always found that it was it's a new challenge, a new form of personal development, and a new opportunity to learn. How do you see that?
Yeah, no, I think all of those are true. Again, I'm not going to try and claim that this was carefully planned out.
That's the right answer.
Yeah, I think it's really important for people to understand, look, there's opportunities out there. I've always been driven by interest in learning more, interest in doing something different, having variety in my role. And that's led me to doing a lot of different things. And I've been very fortunate. Opportunities have come up, or I've pushed towards going for something, even if you don't know exactly what job you want to get. And one of my mentors once said to me, you've got to be very careful about, I want to get to this particular job title in 10 years' time, because that job may no longer exist. And at least 3 or 4 of the roles I went for, or I ended up doing, didn't exist when I started the previous role. So that's pace of development, I think, is only going to become greater over time. So yeah, I think concentrate on, if I was offering advice, I would say concentrate on what you're passionate about, concentrate on what excites you, and go after developing those kind of skills that enable you to do that kind of job, rather than thinking, I have to have this job title by this point in my career.
I love it. No, I love that, and that's invaluable advice. So thanks for sharing that. So you're little short of 2 years as project director. Talk to us about that role, your responsibilities, what it's like from a day-to-day point of view, and your overall responsibility.
I'm fantastically lucky. I get to oversee a brilliant project. I've got a really, really great team of experienced professionals working on that project. The project is, in terms of ownership, is a joint venture. So it's a company that's owned by itself, a project that's owned in itself by more than one company. So it's 50-50 between Equinor and SSE. And the project director's role, that joint venture has board directors, 2 from each company. And the project director's role, or one of the elements of the role, is to be the interface between that board of directors and the project team. In terms of the other key elements of the role to me, as I said, we've got a fantastic team of individuals. I may be misquoting Steve Jobs, but I think it's right that he said that you don't employ really great people and then tell them what to do. So a lot of a leadership role to me is about facilitating people to do their job. So finding out what are the things that are blocking them and moving them out of the way, helping them resolve those issues. There's obviously an element of providing direction and, translating board strategy into what we're actually going to do on the ground. I think those are the kind of key things, and try to appreciate risks that are coming up, and work out how the project is going to work its way through those risks and mitigate them.
So, with it being the Engineer Career podcast, could you share with us the types of engineers that are within that team, and what their roles are?
I will try my best. There's a risk that I miss out one engineering group, and then I'm gonna feel awful.
It's the most important part of the whole podcast.
I should have written all this down in front of me. So no, we've got mechanical engineers working on the project. We've got geotechnical engineers, geophysicists. We've got structural engineers working on the project, electrical engineers. We've got people working on CAD. A lot of them have got engineering background. We've got energy analysts who I worked in resource assessment, as it was previously called, or energy analytics, a lot of whom have an engineering background. But equally, there's project managers, some of whom have got engineering background. We've got people in procurement and commercial, some of whom may have an engineering background. So I suppose there's definitely engineers working on the project, but there's also people who work across the project who may well have studied engineering.
Yeah. I think that's important to show, isn't it? That there's, you don't always have to have engineer in the title to be doing or tapping into what I class as the mindset of an engineer. But then I guess we haven't covered it in terms of the size of Dogger Bank. So you've got A, B, C, and now D. What's the total kind of output of the overall project? I don't want to downplay the significance of it to the UK, because obviously as part of our net zero goals and the drive for more sustainable energy generated within the UK, what's the kind of key, what kind of level of output of electricity are we expecting across the complete package once it's complete?
Yeah, so Dogger Bank A, B, and C are each 1.2 gigawatt projects. So there's a clear link to older listeners, Back to the Future, 1.21 gigawatts of power, which was obviously not a mistake when they thought it up. That was exactly what they were going for. So yeah, together they're 3.6 gigawatts, and then Dogger Bank D is up to 1.5 gigawatts. So just over 5 gigawatts is expected in terms of capacity. Dogger Bank A, B, and C are at varying stages of construction at the moment. Dogger Bank D is much earlier in the process, so we're still in development phase.
Yeah, fantastic. So, I mean, I'll go back onto your career, but I would guess in a few years' time you may look back at this project as one of your standout, successes and achievements. But across your career so far, does anything stand out in particular in terms of an achievement, a challenge that you overcame, or a project you've worked on?
Yeah, so in terms of career, I think there's a few things that have been, I suppose, kind of formative in terms of involvement. So I was actually involved on Dogger Bank very early on in resource assessment, probably back in 2009, looking at layouts and things and the wind data from the project, because there were 2 met masts that were installed out at site. And so it's great to then come back to however many years later and be involved in it, actually getting executed and another phase of it being developed. So that's really exciting. I think the other things I did, one of the things I noticed actually as I got involved in project management is that looking back on my career, a lot of the things I'd done involved either managing or being involved with multidisciplinary teams. So you pulled on resources from all sorts of places and you didn't have any of the line management authority to do so. So it's kind of convincing people they wanted to help you and pulling their expertise in and coming out with a kind of product or solution at the end of it. And actually that's the perfect, I think, is the perfect prep for becoming a project manager, because that's exactly what the job is about.
Exactly.
So I think, yeah, that again wasn't a planned route, but it's something that developed from it. And just to answer your question, because I've gone a little bit off track, there's a few bits that I was involved with in my career. So one of the things was around a project we did looked at forecasting and trading. And that was really, how do you make the process of trading electricity more efficient, starting right away from how do we forecast the output on our wind farms? What are the IT systems to then turn that into our trading decisions? And that was something I was put into and really enjoyed. And it was working with a small team of people, but from really different areas of the business. And it just gave me oversight and a kind of glimpse into what their different roles were. And I really enjoyed that. And it made me, I always say to people who are early stage of their career in the energy industry, make sure at some point you get some sight of how trading works. Because in any other business, it would be like, well, how do we sell our product? But in the energy industry, it can be a bit, not hidden, but it's not always immediately obvious if you're working on a development project. But it's really important to understand how the end product is sold on.
Of course. And then even someone who then isn't in the organisation, they just see the infrastructure being built.
Yeah.
It's the levels behind that. I mean, you've almost summarised it quite nicely without purposely doing so, in terms of your role starting back in 2008.
Yeah.
And now, and the different inputs you've had to the project. It's not just a case of, starting the development of an engineering project which pulls in contractors. There's so much analytics that takes place, and analysis, business cases that have to be approved behind the scenes. So in terms of your career, one of the areas which we always discuss in the podcast is people who have influenced you, who have mentored you, supported you. And the reason we cover it is because it's important for those who are just at the start of their career to recognise that there are people in industry that will support you for it, whether they're in your company or they are someone that you've reached out to and met at an event who just become that unofficial mentor and support mechanism. So who in your career has been a support, a role model or mentor that you've relied on or provided that support to you?
Yeah, I mean, there's been so many different people. So the lady who employed me in the first place was very important because she brought me into the industry, and as I said, it was a bit of a challenge coming from the background that I did to get into the industry in the first place, and it's probably more of a challenge for graduates now, despite the shortage we've got of people that we need in the industry. And I can see you starting to twitch over on the other side of the table. She was a fantastic introduction to the industry, incredibly knowledgeable and really supportive. I think there's been a number of people who have just given me nudges along the way or put me into things at the time which I didn't realize how much of a development opportunity they were. And that's been really appreciated. So the director of engineering at the time, as I said, put me into that forecasting and trading role. He put me into doing these other things alongside my day job of R&D manager, which really developed me and broadened my kind of scope of what I was doing and set me up in the long term for a lot of other roles. Getting involved in Dogger Bank, it's the largest offshore wind farm in the world in construction, was a massive boost. And I've had specific people who I've approached as mentors during my career more recently, really, to have a kind of more direct mentoring relationship, and they've been really helpful in terms of that kind of. It's both mentoring and coaching, so kind of getting me to answer my own questions, my own development needs, and try and see a broader picture. And the other bit I think is really important in terms of giving you confidence of what you can actually achieve. Because I think a lot of people maybe early in their career think it's just them that's worried about or not sure whether they're going to be able to do a role. It's pretty much everyone. So some people might be better at hiding it than others, but most people are pretty nervous when they go into a new role or when they apply for a new role. But that's where the learning happens. That once you're out of your comfort zone and you're on a steep learning curve. And every time I go into a new role, I have to remind myself that, this is normal. This uncomfortable bit of, and if you're in the right role to some extent, you never leave that uncomfortable zone because there's always going to be something that comes up that you don't quite know how to handle. And the thing for me on that is lean on the people around you, like use their expertise, ask for help, and that'll help you develop those skills.
Yeah, that's invaluable advice. And even for a student who's applying for their first job, I speak to a lot of them. A lot of them feel incredibly uncomfortable going through those phases, whether it's the interview phase, and that's all natural. And it's, you and I are different ends of our career or different areas in our career, but we would look back at that and provide advice. But we put ourselves in that position, we'd feel the exact same way.
Yeah, absolutely.
When we were there. This might be a tough question, but I feel I have to ask it, is what do you think in terms of seeking out those role models? What do you feel that you've done? Have you reached out to them? Have they came to you because they've seen that you work hard? And the reason I'm asking that is because if someone's listening to this and they feel, I think about who's my mentors? What can I do to try and get a mentor or to find people to provide that support mechanism? How have you found that you've found them in your career?
Yeah, so no, I think that's a perfectly fair question. I think I've tried to avoid people as specific mentors, and there's a difference for me between someone you want a mentoring relationship, whether it's kind of formal or informal, and people in your career that you interact with that will almost provide a mentoring role anyway, because you get a lot of advice, you seek their help on various things. So when I'm talking about kind of, it's not necessarily a formal mentoring relationship, but it's more that's what you're gearing for rather than someone you just interact with anyway. So in that case, I've tried to avoid people who are anywhere in my direct line management, because I think it's just cleaner that way and it enables you to talk about things, and I think one of the most important things is they'll have a different perspective maybe than someone who's directly in your area of the business will. People I've reached out to, I've tended to look for people who, firstly that I respect, that I've got a real interest in the role that they do, so that it's not just one way, it's a kind of two-way process. People who have real clarity of thought in terms of seeing a problem, looking at it in different ways, and then kind of coming to a conclusion. I think that clarity of thought and being able to express how you've come to a decision is really important, and a skill that I want to develop more and more.
How do you feel you don't have that, or do you? Because I would think you to, based on our relationship so far and discussions, I would say you're someone who would be quite has clarity of thought. Do you feel that's something that you want to develop because you don't have it, or something that you would?
I just think it's one of the most important skills, and I think I have it under some occasions and sometimes in some situations, but it's something that I think is really, really important. Objective, evidence-based decision making is something that's been drilled into everyone involved in Dogger Bank.
I like that.
And I think I think that's really important in terms of how you make decisions, especially the important ones.
That's really interesting, and that's you've covered a really. I don't think we've ever covered that in the podcast before. I've asked that question. I've asked the question of role models and mentors to everyone, and they share it. But I've never asked the question of, how to maybe find the person to support you in your career. I think that type of advice is invaluable because someone will be listening to this and they will think someone external to my organisation, like you said, immediate line management or line of command could be the person that opens up my mind to where I could go, as opposed to being in the organisation, for example, and it being curtailed.
Yeah, and I think also the other thing is don't be afraid. I mean, the things like LinkedIn are a fantastic tool if they're used properly. Don't if you hear a really interesting talk from someone, or you see something online, or you see an email about something that someone's done in the news, don't be afraid to just approach them. Like literally the worst thing they can do is not reply. And you haven't lost anything by making the approach. Most of the time you will get a response from them. And if you get a response that says, sorry, I don't have time, equally, you've lost nothing else. And they may even if they can't interact with you directly, they might point you somewhere else, point you to some really good resources, or you might get to have a chat with them, or you might get into a mentoring relationship with them. So I would just say, don't be scared of approaching someone. If you do it politely and give them a way out if they don't have time for it, then no one's going to mind.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. So going back on to aspiring engineers or students who are listening to the podcast, what advice would you give to them or give to someone starting off their career now? And maybe at college or university, they might be coming to the end of their apprenticeship. What advice would you give to them in terms of kicking off their career?
Are we talking practical advice or kind of where to head for? I suppose more
in terms of practical advice. Students, I think I've discussed it previous to this, is students see industry.
Yeah.
They see a lot of organisations, and they may hear a lot about skills gaps. It's sometimes quite difficult to actually see where they want to go to. A lot of the time I speak to students, I'll say really try to home into what you actually want to do and what you're passionate about and what you love doing. Although it might narrow your options in, you're more likely to then find the organisation or people who are linked to that. So yeah, I guess more practical in terms of trying to find the first step in their career.
Yeah, so the reason I was asking was because my mind was going towards exactly what you were saying. So I say this, and I've said this to my own children, of try and find what you're passionate about, what the purpose is behind the role you want to do, because you're going to be doing a role, well, you're going to be doing a job probably for 40 years of your life. You better enjoy it, otherwise you're really wasting your time. And that's speaking from a massive position of privilege where you've got the choice of how you go into, but it's really important to have that purpose driving you. To me, from my point of view, that's about tackling climate change. That's the foremost thing that drives me in terms of my career. I would say find the thing you're passionate, or the things that you're passionate about. I would say one thing that didn't really occur to me when I was looking for roles, and maybe this is a bit, again, speaking from a position of privilege, but I would say try and make sure that the organizations you're applying to fit with your own values. And there's not something that would have occurred to me when I was looking for jobs after my PhD. And I'm sure a lot of students are much more tuned into this now probably than they were when I was leaving university. But I think that is really important, because at some point there will come a clash between what you believe and what an organization believes. And if you're going into an organization, you fundamentally disagree with their values, that's not a great place to start. So I think those are two kind of bit more higher level. In terms of the practical of actually finding roles, things have moved on a lot since in the 20 odd years probably since I was a fresh graduate. But I think it's some general advice which will stand the test of time is try and build your network. So make contact with people. Reach out to people. There are quite a lot of free events you can go to as a student. So I remember I went to All Energy when I was I think I just finished university, and I went along to that event. That was a great chance to get a bit of a glimpse into different areas of the renewable industry, and was free. And I'm sure there's plenty more out there in terms of free events that you can go along to and just give you the opportunity to talk to different people, understand more about their roles. And there's a massive breadth of roles across renewable energy that you can get into, particularly as an engineer. So yeah, I think that's the kind of advice I would offer.
Invaluable advice. Thanks for sharing that. The events, there's a long list of events that happen in the UK, from Innovation Zero down in London to All Energy, and then to a number of the institutions, certainly within the engineering industry, which if you're a member of or an associate member, student member, you can get access to. Not to mention the engineering career events that we hold as well.
Oh, come on, you could have done better with the plug there, Josh. You could have really gone for that.
I don't know when this is going out, so I don't know. So in terms of looking forward to your career, in terms of your professional goals, you've obviously got, you're working on Dogger Bank D, and I'm sure you have goals for that. So what goals do you have coming up, both professionally and both within Dogger Bank D?
Yes, I mean, on the project, we're working on a world-leading innovative project, and we're kind of the next phase of the largest offshore wind farm in the world in construction. So it's a really exciting place to be, and my goal on that really is just to keep going with that project, keep the team motivated, keep developing the project at pace, and see it through to fruition. In terms of personal goals, my goals have always been quite simple, which is keep working in an industry I'm really passionate about, keep doing stuff that interests me and that excites me, and keep looking for that variety in my work. And I've got that in spades in the role I do at the moment, because I get to see right across the project. One thing that a friend remarked to me that was quite insightful, and I'd never really realised it before he said it to me a few years ago, was the thing that drives me is kind of making things work better, which is absolutely, I think, typical of an engineer, probably rather than a physicist. So maybe I'm just a closet engineer, that's I think that thing of, it can be a bane as well, of when you see things that don't work well, it really frustrates you. But I think that is something that really drives me in terms of wanting to make things work better and wanting to make things better.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing that. It's we may have to try and get you an honorary doctorate in engineering. That would be and then we can release the episode.
Well, that's a long wait.
This has been a really great discussion. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast and sharing your career, but also the world of being in the energy industry, and in particular renewables and everything that the opportunities that entails, but also some of the advice you provided is absolutely invaluable, and I'm really excited to share it with the engineering career community and those who follow what we're doing. So you mentioned something really important as we conclude now, going into the final question, is that you're passionate about sustainability, about the drive towards net zero. So I guess the question is what around that keeps you passionate, and why is that important to you?
I think it's just that it's an absolute imperative for humankind. If we want to have a good and happy future, prosperous future, and we want the world to develop equitably, with people from all nations, I think we've absolutely got to tackle climate change. It's not going to happen without that being tackled, and being tackled as quickly as possible. And I honestly can't think of a more important job or industry that I could be involved in than this. I have it's a bit cheesy, but I have a little reminder on my calendar each week, which is, if this was your last day on Earth, are you doing what you should be doing? And it's just a little reminder, I suppose, to say, think about what you're doing with your life. Is it what matters? And I can't be doing anything else that I feel more passionate about at the moment.
Well, that's the probably best ending of the podcast I've had. So thanks a lot for joining me, Rob.
No, it's been brilliant talking to you. Thanks, Josh.
Cheers.